Are we present and all present and accounted for? Everyone here is ready?
Yeah.
Huh?
All right, then let's go. So yes, this is the story of nuclear weapons and the Cold War. So what do all of these have in common? Helldivers 2, a Snickers bar, Minecraft, Fallout, and cocaine.
They all are derivative, or they all branched off from whatever you're about to show in the next slide.
Hey, that's
Well, the
cheating.
answer
That's metagaming.
Yeah, the answer is nuclear weapons.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I meant.
So
Wait, what does
yeah.
Minecraft have to do with nukes?
You'll see.
Yeah,
Oh.
we'll get to that.
So, yeah, it should go without saying, nuclear secrets are secret for a reason. All the information in this is publicly available. All the any calculations are either basic or follow publicly available guides. Designs are also publicly available. If you're an FBI agent or a NSA agent or an MI6 agent and you see something on this thing that you don't want being leaked, check Google. What can I say? I found it. A terrorist probably could. So fix your fix your
need
leak
to
problems.
do your job better, FBI.
Added bullet point. He's not a terrorist. So
I'm pretty sure
Let's-
like 2 years ago I must have put on this chat, our general chat, that the instruction manual ingredients for a nuclear bomb.
You
Maybe.
think you did
You
that?
just offhandedly post the anarchist cookbook.
You know what? I wouldn't even be shocked.
Yeah. Leaking nuclear secrets is turbo illegal and gets like every security service knocking your door at 3 a.m. Don't do it. I'm not gonna. You shouldn't either. So, yeah. Anyway, now that that's out of the way, we need to introduce 2 new measurements. Why? It turns out people aren't good at big numbers, especially with explosive amounts. Like, yeah, we have this statement for proof here. So, like, yeah, we're to stop doing kilotons. 36.2 petajoules, utterly deranged. Years of Feynman diagrams and yet no real-world use found. Want to make steam? We used coal for that. It worked fine. Yeah.
We gotta use
Then-
megatons.
Yeah. Then, yeah, we have all of these things down here as well. No anime girl demon core, no lighting nuclear missiles, and no bunch of wires around a ball.
This is real science done by real
Yeah,
physicists.
I sort of want. I know you probably don't have it in the presentation, but that clip from Top Gear where they find a Satan II missile and they try to light it with a with a match.
Yeah. That clip is really funny. Unfortunately, I don't actually have the clip in it, but yeah.
I can
Skip
find
it.
it. I can find it.
Fun fact, actually, Russia just tried to test launch when it blew up in the silo.
Yeah, I saw that.
I'm glad people don't put nukes on these things.
No, they do. This just didn't happen on it when it blew up, so that's good, I guess.
Josh Link wants some of the $2 donation, saying this is why Truman can't visit Japan.
Yeah. Well, that and he's dead, but oh well.
His spirit.
If he comes back.
Japan.
They could parade him around.
So we now need 2 measurements to quantify this instead. The first one of these is the Snickers index. So it turns out that 1 gram of TNT has an explosive energy of 4,184 joules. Very interestingly, that is exactly equal to 1 calorie. So this means that a standard Snickers bar with 280 calories in it has the same explosive power as 280 grams of TNT, which is a bit more than half a pound.
Interesting.
Yeah. This will be the basis to measure the amount of energy, the number of Snickers bars.
All right.
And
Wait, so-
now we have our current pop culture reference, the Minecraft factor. 1 block in Minecraft is a cubic meter. That's everything. Solid gold blocks, iron, diamond, and yes, TNT. 1 cubic meter of TNT weighs about 3,600 pounds. Has a total energy of 8.5 gigajoules, which means a Minecraft TNT block has a Snickers index of 5,857.1.
I'm
So-
following.
We will use these to make the numbers slightly easier to visualize for our coming nuclear weapons. I know some people probably expected this to be all about the biggest bombs, and yes, the big ones will be in there, but everybody's heard of the Tsar Bomba. Chances are you haven't heard of some of the smaller ones. So yes, there will be some big ones, but the main focus will be toward the smaller side because let's be honest, they get crazy.
Tim,
Are we talking? Oh, sorry, on.
I was just gonna say, I love the idea that you got halfway through this presentation. You got halfway through this and then decided, you know what? I need to invent my own units of measurement as well.
Yeah.
Unless
Well,
the
part of this
censorship is
actually-
real.
Part of this came out when we determined that if you manage to gather the entire world supply of bananas for 250 years, you can make a nuclear weapon using the potassium.
Will this presentation be including the Davy Crockett?
Yes.
Okay.
So, first things first, the year is 1949. The US monopoly on nuclear weapons has been ended. So, since the end of World War II, for basically 5 years, the US could do whatever they wanted because they had nukes and nobody else did. Yes, they had like 2, but they still had them, and the rest of the world had 0. And 2 is more than 0. Even worse, those darn Russians got one. Which means that not only did the US not have the other ones anymore, communists have them now as well. And we can't have that. So, the nuclear arms race at this point kicked off and proceeded in 2 very distinct directions. First was to make obscenely large weapons, obsessed with just getting the Snickers index as big as physically possible. And on the second side was making literally every single thing in the military capable of delivering a nuclear device. So, yeah. The Tsar Bomba was the biggest nuclear bomb ever detonated. It had a yield of 50 megatons, which, by the way, a megaton is 1 million tons. So that's 50 million tons of TNT, or 178.5 million Snickers bars, or 30.5 million blocks of Minecraft TNT. The US saw the Soviet test and thought, why don't we try a bigger one? Much bigger. The US will plan for a bomb up to 10 gigatons in yield. And a gigaton is 1 billion tons.
But I thought
This
the Tsar
is
Bomba
200
was the
times-
biggest bomb.
Sorry?
I thought the Tsar
Sorry?
Bomba was the biggest bomb ever.
Yes, it was. You'll see why in a second. So this planned 10 gigaton bomb, which is 10 billion tons of TNT, would have a Snickers index of 35.7 billion, micro factor of 6.1 billion. But there's a slight problem. It never got past early development. Why? It turns out nuclear bombs are really fucking heavy. The Tsar Bomba weighed 27 tons. And it was so big, it couldn't fit in any plane that the Soviets even had.
Oh yeah,
We don't have any video of it, but when the bomb was dropped, it was hanging half outside the aircraft it was being transported in.
Yeah,
It did not fit in any Soviet aircraft.
Yeah.
And weight tends to scale linearly with yield, so that means a bomb that's 200 times more powerful is 200 times heavier. This means that the bomb they would generate would be 5,500 tons, which is 12 million pounds.
Jeez.
This was the same weight as some destroyers of the time. And these are fully operational guided missile destroyers of the US Navy, would weigh the same as one bomb.
But
Clearly,
big number.
this is not feasible. 5,500 tons is monstrously heavy. It is way beyond the capability of any launch vehicle. No plane, no rocket, nothing can move it. It's just too big. This means that it has to be blown up where it was built. And being experimental, this would be in the lab that built it, with all the nuclear scientists that built it. Obviously, vaporizing your entire nuclear research team is not a good idea, so most of them decided just to not bother. I mean, even then, Operation Flashback, which is what this was only ever intended to show that the US could match the yield, just literally could not be asked, so didn't. And to be fair, even the Tsar Bomba was kind of the same thing. It was so impractically big, it could not be moved. Like, if the Soviets tried to attack the US with the Tsar Bomba, the plane would be low, slow, and light up on every single radar like it was the size of a barn. and it'll be shot down instantaneously.
If I remember correctly, like the SAR when they tested the SAR bomber, they made it very clear in their propaganda that they could detonate a larger bomber, like a larger bomb, but they just didn't. What their words, they didn't need to. Is
Exactly.
how they
Like,
would phrase-
yeah, like they didn't include a piece made of uranium that they could have. If they put it in, it would have been around 2.5 times larger. But again, like there was just no need. It was already the biggest bomb by a good 2-3 times, and it was already so impractically huge they couldn't do anything with it. And again, like if you drop this on a city, the city would already be mega dead. You can't make it more mega dead. It's already dead.
This is for like killing a country.
Yeah, even then, like it's just not needed. It's a waste of material, frankly. And
it's like that scene in Oppenheimer where like they're discussing the super, and the scientists are going sort of what's the point of using this weapon? It's just at this point it's just genocide. Like using this weapon.
Like they're saying, what is the actual point? Like this will not give you any strategic advantage. This will just guarantee that the rest of the world will attempt to kill you under any cost whatsoever.
This is a question that I've had for a
yeah.
long time about nuclear weapons. And I don't know if you'll even be able to answer this, just because it's outside of the scope of this presentation. But when a nuke goes off, this chart that you have, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs, their mushroom clouds alone were almost the height of Mount Everest. Mm-hmm. When a nuclear bomb goes off, how far away can people see it? Like when they were testing nukes in the middle of the desert in the US, did people in towns nearby like see the sky flash white?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean they are really bright. Obviously, you won't see it everywhere in the world, but yeah, you can see it from pretty far away.
I can slightly answer this question with case studies. 2 case studies. One being in New Vegas. Sorry, not New Vegas. Las Vegas.
Yeah, the Fallout universe.
Yeah, in Las Vegas, it was a popular tourist site because you can witness nuclear explosions happening in Nevada from your hotel room, and it was actually quite a popular. I swear I may have even put it in one of my presentations before, but yeah, that was a common area for
people to just hang out and watch the nukes go off.
Yeah, exactly. And for the Tsar bomber, because they launched it on an island north of Russia, I can't remember the name of the island, but the flash was witnessed from people over 500-ish kilometers away, who were in mainland Russia, and even though they were in the part of the test, they witnessed the effects of this bomb.
Yikes.
So yeah, that's a large nuclear weapon. Ultra high yield devices were impractical, even in the most ultra war hawk person in existence. Like that, what's that joke where it's like the U.S. senator is like 118 years old, holding Blood Feast or something. Like even he would recognize this is a little bit ridiculous. But that didn't stop everybody. These are 2 of our scientists, Edward Teller and Stanislaw Ulam.
I know that name.
Interestingly enough, one of these 2 guys worked on the Manhattan Project, and they came up with the idea of the super. Teller first heard the idea of using a traditional nuclear bomb to ignite fusion in 1941, and he loved the idea. He liked it a lot. Later on, Stanislaw Ulam joined and had to solve some critical math because there were some issues with how do you make a bomb set off another bomb without blowing up the first bomb, kind of thing. Obviously, that's a problem. So they came up with this called the Teller-Ulam design. Pretty much, the circle you see on top is a traditional nuclear bomb. It's a fission bomb, some uranium goes off, and it releases heat, and most importantly, radiation. They use this radiation to compress a bunch of hydrogen in this little rod bit here, and that goes off as a fusion bomb, which powers the sun.
So this would be the like stereotypical H bomb then.
Yeah. This is an H bomb. This is a thermonuclear weapon.
Okay.
And everyone jokes about how the fission bombs the US dropped on Japan was a portable sun. That's only semi-true. It still was a nuclear reaction, but it wasn't fusion. This is fusion. This is literally making it an instant sun.
This is literally like the core of the sun itself being like
existing for a fraction of a second.
Yeah, this quite literally, this is a portable sun. Like, no facetious about it. This is a portable sun. This is the basis of pretty much every nuclear weapon ever designed. That's thermonuclear style. An advantage to this is that there is no theoretical limit to the number of stages or the yield you can have. The only restrictions are size and how much stuff you can get for it. This does mean, theoretically, you could make a bomb that could destroy the entire Earth in one shot. But you just don't have enough stuff to make it out of. So no one has yet. Thankfully. Now, at this point, they had a realization. Nuclear weapons are a pretty good solution to a problem. To any problem, in fact. Are those ships over there really hard to sink? Use a nuclear torpedo. What about that submarine? It's really far away, it's hard to destroy, can't be bothered going to find it. How about a nuclear depth charge? What about those darn Russians put a bunker inside a mountain? What about a nuclear bunker buster?
This is literally like tossing grenades at ants. Like, like level of problem solving here.
Like, they saw nuclear weapons as a solution to any sort of problem that didn't quite work the way they were expecting. Like, they had some issues with their current bunker busters at the time, not penetrating that far, so they couldn't really bust a bunker. So they said, slap a nuke on the front, and problem solved. That was a solution for pretty much everything at this point. The Americans did it, the Russians did it, the Brits did it, everybody did it. After the large, we now get into the small stuff. And this is, in my opinion, where it gets the most interesting. So, we've all played Fallout. We all know the Fat Man. It's a shoulder-fired nuclear catapult, and it launches mini nukes. Wonder where they got that idea from.
Oh.
It turns out the US invented something pretty similar. It's called the Crockett Rocket. It is a recoilless gun that fires miniature nuclear warheads. That's it there on the right. That little black thing with fins is a nuke.
That you get to carry on your person.
Mm-hmm. And it had a range of 2 miles, and it was planned to augment artillery in NATO, particularly along the Iron Curtain, which would be like basically West Germany. West Germany and a little bit of places like Greece and Turkey that were off on the eastern side by the Russians. It had a yield of 20 tons, which gives you a Snickers index of 71 and a microfactor of 12. Now that sounds small, but it is much, much more than conventional artillery. And as you can see here, this was basically I fired it, you set it up, put a leash on it more or less, and then walked away.
And step away from the nuke.
Yeah. West Germany really wanted to get some for themselves, but they were turned down by the US. It turns out that Germany wanted to replace all of their artillery with these things and just not have any conventional artillery. The US was concerned this would make them unable to defend against invasion without using nuclear weapons, which obviously wouldn't be a good idea. It pretty much eliminated their ability to defend, as you just said, and it also meant you would guarantee an escalation because, they use nukes, why can't we? So then the Soviets use the nukes, and then all of a sudden the world's over. That's not fun. So the weapon was praised for being an innovation in miniaturization. It was the first miniaturized nuclear warhead to some degree. And the principles that applied would later be reused in missiles and bombs and so on. It did not serve long. The shape of the weapon was not aerodynamic really at all. Troops nicknamed it the atomic watermelon because it looked like one. I personally don't think it does, but hey, I didn't see it.
They were eating during the summer. Like,
I just want to say the fact that guy looks so nervous to even touch it.
I assume that
to be fair, if someone plopped it on your desk and said, "Yeah, here's a nuke," I think
I had to panic too. Yeah.
But yeah, so radiation was actually quite low for the weapon, but it still required extensive safety procedures because if someone stole it, they have a nuke, and that was not seen as a good thing. So yeah, it was very expensive, and the documentation to operate it was, when I say pages long, I mean it would rival like the Bible in length. It was a long book to figure out how to use the thing. And there were also fears that because it would be an artillery division, it would be the responsibility of just a sergeant. So they were saying some sergeant would start a nuclear war because he was just unhappy with his position. So he says, "Screw it, I'm going to go nuke the Russians." And all of a sudden the world's over. So yeah, not good.
So was this ever fired like in combat?
Oh yeah, so in combat, no. But it was fired in testing. This picture actually is an example of what it did when it was fired.
Jeez.
What's the perspective on that? Like from a ground level?
I don't know how
can't tell
far.
based
I
on
don't
the
know how far
frame.
it is, but I mean, like,
That's insane.
it's mounted on Jeeps, so obviously they expect you to be able to fire and move.
Oh my
But-
god.
Yeah.
They just kill themselves.
Well, its effective range was 2 miles, right? So this would be minimum
Yeah, so
2 miles away.
Okay, but in a tree line? Like what are you gonna shoot that for? Like, yeah, no, that's the kill yourself weapon.
No, you don't fire this from a tree line. You fire this at the tree line.
Yeah.
You're like, there are
Still.
people hiding there somewhere. Fucking
Okay, well,
nuke 'em.
yeah, the idea of it being on the back of a Jeep is what I'm primarily talking
yeah.
about.
What do you mean? You think this isn't a good idea?
No, I think it's
You
a
know,
great idea, and
you
that's why we're
driving-
seeing them all over the
driving-
country.
Driving it
I'm-
under a passenger with a nuclear weapon?
I'm in a Jeep. Either I get to drive away, and because of the Jeep's brilliant engine, you can drive out of the blast itself, or because the Jeep is such high quality defenses, I can just stay in the Jeep and survive.
Yep.
I'm sponsored by Jeep, by the way. Just like...
Jeep, send Krusty his check.
Yeah. So yeah, Now, what does Helldivers have to do with anything? So if you've played the game before, you'll know one of the missions is to launch an ICBM. And the ICBM delivers a thermonuclear weapon, like the ones we saw earlier from our good friends Mr. Teller and Ulam. This fills a strategic weapon role, meaning in the long-term grand strategy, if you want to wipe a city off the map, you use one of these. Now, other than that, you also have this, which is the mini nuke artillery shell. And it produces the same explosion as the Hell Bomb, which makes a Hell Bomb a nuclear weapon as well. It turns out Helldivers didn't invent nuclear artillery. So here we have a video, and I want you to see what you can see.
Oh yeah.
Dude, why the thing makes so many?
Oh,
Oh no!
Oh,
What the fuck?
that's actually mental.
You're
Oh,
telling me
God.
that thing came out of the two? Oh no!
So
That's actually
yeah, just
insane.
playing anyone who didn't see the thing, nuclear gun, it fires, whatever. About 20 seconds pass, and then
Whatever.
Yeah.
It blasts a nuke. It is.
yeah,
what
20
it is.
seconds pass, and then yeah.
That is mental.
So this is the M65 atomic cannon.
Wait a minute. I don't like that you went from this was to this is. That implies that it is currently used.
It still probably exists.
Yeah. So it fired the W9 nuclear shell. It's 11 inches diameter and weighs 900 pounds, by the way.
Oh jeez. How'd they even get
Like-
that thing to fly?
With a lot of gunpowder.
Yeah.
So it had a yield of 15 kilotons, meaning 15,000 tons. And it had a Snickers index of 53,000 and a Minecraft factor of about 9,000.
These Snicker index like measurements are actually helping me because I understand the tonnage, but when it's put in perspective of Snickers, it all becomes clear.
It crystallizes.
It's like measuring in
I
American
get it
football
now.
fields.
yeah. I understand why you do that.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, Atomic Annie, as it was known, was not in service for very long. It was extremely heavy. The shell was not compatible with anything else, so it could only be fired from Atomic Annie, and they didn't make that many of them. So a couple other ones came out around the same time. One of these is the W-48 Artillery Fired Atomic Projectile, known by its acronym AFAP.
Yeah.
It was much lighter, but its yield was also much lower, with just 100 tons. And compare that to the 15,000 from the other one.
Boo.
Yeah. Although it did mean that when you fired it, you didn't vaporize the city, you just vaporized a corner of the city instead.
I mean, I could imagine it being useful.
Yeah. So, quick side story. Around this time, the US thought we should start testing our nukes underground. Part of this was they had to make sure it was obviously safe to do this. So, they came up with an idea of a test called Operation Plum Bob Pascal B. They buried a 300-ton yield bomb in a bunker underground, gave it a Snickers index of about 1,000, Minecraft 180, and then they welded a 1-ton solid iron manhole cover over the top. Some of the engineers that were doing the test thought it might pop off, so they painted it bright pink and put a high-speed camera pointing at it. After the detonation, it was nowhere to be found. They looked across the entire area, and they couldn't see it. Then they went to check the camera. They caught exactly one frame of the manhole cover moving. So because they got one frame, they don't know how fast it was going, but they know how fast it was at least going. It was going at least 41 miles per second.
Oh my god.
Which is 141,000 miles per hour.
I was gonna ask what escape velocity is because I forgot, and yeah,
Yeah, this is 6 times escape velocity. And it is the unconfirmed fastest human-made object ever.
That's pretty cool.
this
I guess.
pink manhole cover that might have launched to space.
Yeah. So the only thing that may be faster was the Parker Solar Probe, which NASA launched literally into the sun. And that reached a top speed of about 600,000 miles an hour, which is a lot faster than this. But to be fair, this is the minimum speed. It could be going a lot faster. We just don't know how much faster.
Hey, I'm gonna say that doesn't count. The manhole wins, in my opinion.
Some people say that the forces from being instantly transported to 150,000 miles an hour from a standstill would vaporize the manhole cover. I call them non-believers.
Yeah. Doubters.
It is significantly funnier to assume that a bright pink iron manhole cover was immediately launched into space, and sometime 10 billion years from now, after the Earth's sun is blown up and killed the Earth,
It'll fall back down.
an alien planet will be kinetic missile striked by a iron cover launched in the 60s.
I was gonna say, like in like with Roman history, they'll find some artifacts once in a while, and they'll go like, I wonder what the Romans use this for. But like, I just imagine like aliens finding our like pink manhole.
They're like, this is
and they're like,
the least.
Sorry, go on.
This is the least efficient kind of weapon they could have launched at us.
What does it mean?
Like, what is this item or object? Like, why did they launch this thing?
Wait, Tim, how high is space? Like, if this thing is going at 41 miles per second, how long?
So I can tell you,
how
actually.
long did it take from this explosion to go off to this fucking manhole cover to be in space?
1.5 seconds.
Wow.
That's fucking crazy.
You know in Gmod when you like mesh things together and it just like flies off like in an instant? That's like what I'm imagining.
I fucking love that. So you really do mean to tell me that there is like a greater than 50% chance that this thing went to space in less than 2 seconds?
Well, realistically, no. Chances are it was vaporized instantly. But if you're a believer like the rest of us, and you assume it went 141,000 miles an hour, yes, it would have made it in about 1.5 seconds.
I love that.
I was just gonna say, I know you're gonna hate me for this, but no, it did not survive.
No, absolutely not. It would have been vaporized. But
I just like from my understanding of like, my understanding of the atmosphere, no, it would have survived.
So, yeah, chances are the reason they only caught one frame was because it just ceased to exist before the second one happened. But either way, if it did manage to stay intact and it was made of mithril or something, yeah, Space is considered by NASA 60 miles above the surface. So yeah, there you go. It made it to space in a second and a half.
Wait, 60 miles? 60?
60.
Yeah.
That is not nearly as far away as I thought space was.
Space is really not that far.
That's considered the edge of space, but there is still technically some atmosphere. So
you have to go
it
past
can
the
go hard, it
Kármán
can go
line.
lower. Yeah, the Kármán line is about 60 miles up. 62 technically, but close enough.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the main event.
Thanks for scaring me, Tim.
So we next come to the Hell Bomb. Helldiver uses the Hell Bomb as a demolition weapon, and it turns out the US came with a similar idea called the atomic demolition munition. So it was pretty much meant to be used the exact same way it was in Helldivers, funnily enough, which is to go and blow something up. And a few versions exist. They were called the ADM, the SADM, and the MADM, meaning the regular, special, and medium, respectively. Yield varied quite a lot, anywhere from 500 to 15,000 tons of TNT. You have your Snickers and Minecraft measurements down there for anyone who's interested in those.
Wait,
And
1,000 to 50,000?
sorry, 500 to 15,000.
Okay, that's quite a scale.
Yeah. So it was intended to be used to destroy large infrastructure. That's things like bridges, tunnels, bunkers, and power stations. And these actually served up until like almost the 90s. They were in active service.
Oh yeah. That's spooky.
So first, we're going to talk about the medium ADM. So this was the second one designed, the first being the regular ADM. This one was designed to be carried by a team of 4 to 5 people. And the reason for that was the weapon weighed 400 pounds. Obviously, you can't get up to just one guy. So it was intended to be broken up and carried in parts by the team members. So this was the biggest one. It had a yield of about 15,000 tons. And yeah, that's just them holding one next to it. It was intended to be used against very, very large infrastructure, things like dams, airfields, and factories, because a single bomb could take them out in one go. So you plant it, run away, and then set it off, and voila, where'd the factory go? Initially, it was protected by a 3-digit padlock, meaning that if you wanted to use the weapon, you had a 3-digit code you had to enter. Later on, around the 70s, they realized this was a little bit easy to bypass, so it was upgraded to a permissive action link, which required the nuclear codes. Although at the time, the nuclear codes were 5 digits. So, better? Question mark?
Slightly. Still could brute force it.
If you shot at it with a gun, would you be able to explode it like a real hell?
Chances are no, because nuclear weapons' internal design is quite sensitive, and if you mess it up, it tends to not work properly.
I will say this. I was given the code for a thermonuclear weapon in 1984. By like because long story short, essentially I visited Russia. We went to a nuclear bunker. They had the nuclear.
You mess it up, it tends
launch systems in the bunker, and they said we cannot give you the codes currently, obviously for obvious reasons, but we can give you like previous codes that we've used in the past. And I was given specifically the codes for 1987, I think it was, which was 549267.
All right, time travelers, if you're listening, there it is.
So for those of you who are worried that the nuclear codes are just 5 digits, so not anymore. Now they're 12 digits. And yeah, fun fact, they're actually printed on a credit card every day and given to the president because they change daily. So every day in the morning, the president gets basically a credit card size piece of plastic that has 3 codes. 2 are fake and 1 is real. He's told code number 2 is real. Cool, see you later. And then if he wants to use them, he has to open the card. Remember, 2 is the real one, and then use that to tell them, because if he gives the wrong one, they say, those aren't the real nuclear codes. Fuck off and try again later.
Does he have a big red button, though?
We don't actually know. He may. In the nuclear football, he may. But, yeah.
If he picks the wrong one, are they going to be like, you're the imposter, you're not the real president?
Mm-hmm.
So fun fact, actually, yeah, even if he does give the correct code, he also then has to say 2 letters, off like numerically, to prove he's the real president, not just someone who tortured the codes out of him. So let's okay, that code's correct. What's your letter code?
I'm just
And then he
thinking
has
of
to say like D's nuts or something, I don't know. And then they do it.
I'm just thinking of that James Corden thing where they interviewed Biden and he's like, "Oh, so you can order an ice cream for that?" And he's like, "Maybe." It's just like nuclear weapons being launched.
So they realized a 3-digit padlock you could just bolt cutter through was not sufficient, so they upgraded it to an action link. Now, the weapon was designed to be laid and hidden, so you'd take it, bury it basically, cover it up with leaves and barbed wire, and you could set a timer for up to 21 days. Or you could set it to detonate remotely after you're presumably run away for a day and a half. Now, there was concern was expressed to be able to drop 5 people with 80 pounds each of nuclear equipment in addition to the regular load. So they thought that's not reasonable, because especially if any one part was lost, the weapon wouldn't work anymore. So they came with a different idea, the special ADM. This one was also carried by paratroopers, but it was small enough it could be carried by just one person. It weighed 70 pounds, and this is it. This is it in its carrying case. And you see the handle and a zipper. Inside that box is a nuclear bomb.
Try to get that for airport security.
Yeah.
Sir, I just found it outside. I'm just trying to go home.
I know it looks like a bomb, but
I missed this.
But I'll assure you, it's not.
I missed this one, but Josh Watson with the $5 saying, "First supersonic projectile, take that, Russia." About the manhole cover.
Yeah.
Nice.
So this yield was much smaller, but you could actually pick. You could pick anywhere between 10 and 1,000 tons. And 10 tons is, for nuclear weapons, very, very small. It's the same as just 35 Snickers bars, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Or 6.1 blocks of Minecraft TNT for the smallest.
What's the point of that?
Do you know how much 10 tons of TNT is? Yeah, it's a small number, but it's a lot more than, like, a grenade.
I mean, a precision strike on a pillar on a bridge, can do wonders.
Yeah.
Also, nuclear weapons as well. Like, as much as radiation isn't actually a long-lasting effect, it's still, if you're a close intaker of nuclear radiation, then it's still pretty much damaging.
Yeah. And, even then, it's, even small for nuclear weapons, quote-unquote, is still really big in general. A 10-ton bomb that wasn't nuclear would be one of the biggest bombs our country has.
Huh.
And this one was just carried by some guy. A special forces, some guy, but still.
Just some random Joe Schmo.
It's just the bag I'm looking at. It's it is something like somebody would take for.
I know. I want a lunchbox that looks exactly like that.
Yeah, like whatever you go in your bag.
It's not a nuke.
Nothing.
I'll tell you that.
So did you pack your own bag today?
Yeah, so this is how it was deployed with you. This is a Special Forces paratrooper. Strapped to your thighs.
South Park reference.
And then you just jumped out of a plane with it.
Giant nutsack.
They just let you do that.
Well, there's a lot of training that happens before that, but yes, you eventually have to jump out of a plane with a giant bomb strapped to your nutsack.
Does the parachute even work at this point?
Last one.
It is a bigger parachute because you have 70 extra pounds on you, but
I was thinking,
if it was the middle of the Cold War and the Cold War went hot, picture it's 2 a.m. You're sitting in a C-130 plane over eastern Russia, and you get the order. You strap the bomb to your legs, kind of waddle to the back, and then just fall at the back of a plane. And next thing you know, your order is to go vaporize a town.
So was this like a sacrifice thing, or would the paratrooper like stay like
Well-
they would drop the bomb from their thighs?
No, so the bomb was not armed. So it was the same way as the medium demolition munition. You still had to set it. So it wouldn't just go off when it hit the ground.
Oh, so it's like a land, put it somewhere, run away.
Was there like
Yeah,
a
it's
timer? Or
Basically a
attached to it?
sabotage bomb. So yeah, it was employed against smaller architecture, but still quite effective against the larger stuff. Now, like the MADM, it had to be set up. It would then be covered in leaves and barbed wire and so on. But there was a problem. The timer on this bomb had a maximum time of 12 hours. And it turns out this was because the timer had to be mechanical. It could not be electrical.
Oh, that
because they were
makes-
concerned that
makes total sense.
if a nuclear bomb went off overhead, the EMP generator would fry the circuits and the bomb would be useless. And then the Soviets could then take it and reverse engineer it, which is not good. But a mechanical timer is immune to EMPs, obviously, because there's no electronics in it. However, the timer was not very accurate. It was prone to going off early.
Hmm.
And the longer you set it for, the earlier it went off.
What? What? Wait a minute.
RNG, baby.
Seems like a pretty big flaw.
Yeah, it had another issue was it could theoretically be set for longer, up to 35 hours. But if it was set for over 12, it became very unreliable and tended to detonate randomly.
Randomly?
If I remember correctly, it's not about this bomb, but I remember with the SAR bomber when they did the test launch for that, they had to use a mechanical clock to detonate it, and it had to be aligned perfectly to the general clocks that the Soviets were using at the time. And it was just the fact that the plane didn't really have a lot of time to get out of the area for that nuclear explosion, and they completely had to rely on a stopwatch to know that the clock had been set, because at the time the Soviet government didn't realize that yes, there's a possibility that the clock could be malfunction, because it was a mechanical clock,
And it was Russian mechanical clock.
Yeah, exactly. And the plane would have to fly out of the area, and it was a very good chance. I think when the pilot said they were told it was a 50% chance that they would be caught in the explosion after dropping it, because the clock would malfunction compared to the nuclear detonation.
And so, yeah, if you set the timer for the maximum amount of 12 hours, sometimes it detonates 13 minutes or earlier.
Pretty big margin
So-
for error.
This led to some people calling it a suicide mission, I suppose for obvious reasons. But officially, you're supposed to set it and then run away. And
My
then after
question
that,
is,
it goes off, it blows up.
My question is, how did they work that out? Did they have to go through this scenario over and over again and just detonating nuclear?
Well, no, I would imagine the clock malfunctions all on its own. You know, like they could just check the clock's reliability
Yeah,
without attaching it to a nuke.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. And if this is a really, really bad picture, but if you can see down there, that is the timer screen. And
Right.
safe and arm. When you turn that to arm, that starts counting down. And you need to run. Because if
This
you
is-
don't, you get vaporized.
This is literally red wire, blue wire. I need to cut one of them.
It is.
Scenario.
Sorry, you're going to say something, Skipty?
No. I was just agreeing with Krusty. It's the idea of detonating a nuke with a mechanical clock is
Yeah,
hilarious.
and we need to cut the blue wire. No, I can't cut the blue wire. It has to be red wire.
Yeah.
And you'll notice
Look,
right above it, it
I think-
says, sorry. Go ahead.
Look, I think to be fair, if you set a timer for 12 hours and you're still there like 11 hours, fucking 47 minutes later, you're like, all right, well, there's 13 minutes to go. Time to get going. Like, you should not be anywhere fucking near that. You should be going for fucking hours at that point.
I mean, yeah, so the manual officially said, yeah, set it up, like bury it and then leave. However, there are rumors that for some ultra high priority missions, you had to basically sit on the thing and hope that no one came and tried to disarm it.
I'm gonna.
And
set
that
my
one they pretty
nuke.
much recognized it would not be possible to get out of the way in time. So you basically just sat on the bomb, and when it went off, you just suddenly ceased to exist.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Yeah.
That's kind of messed up.
Don't touch the nuclear bomb. It's my log. It's my log that I sell. Don't touch it.
And then if you notice here, above the timer in all caps, it says "Do not turn above 15 hours."
Otherwise, you might
Oh,
just
no.
instant delete.
So yeah, keep in mind these served from the 60s up until like 1990. So for 30 years, these were in the U.S. Army's
You
arsenal.
say served, but again, was any of them deployed? I mean, I guess we wouldn't really know.
So yeah, they were deployed; they were just never used.
Mm.
That's good.
So,
I am,
so yeah, so
I am
these
comforted.
weapons were issued to special forces operating in Europe. And now, the U.S. was not the only ones who came up with these kinds of weapons. The Russians, and in particular the Brits, came up with something pretty similar. The Brits developed something of their own called Blue Peacock. However, unlike the other two, this was a nuclear landmine. Like the M80M,
That's even worse.
This
I would
was-
argue.
this was meant to be buried and then set on a very long timer. It had a yield of about 10,000 tons and was meant to be set off in the event of a Soviet invasion.
Can I ask Tim? Was this tested in Australia?
That comes up later.
Okay.
So one of the issues they had, unfortunately, was that Germany gets pretty cold in the winter. And because they used electronic methods, not mechanical, there was a risk the electronics would freeze. So somehow they discovered that a chicken emits just enough body heat to make the electronics not freeze. So what they did was they built a nuclear weapon, put a chicken with 8 days worth of food, water, and air into a chamber next to electronics, welded it shut, and said, all right, you got 8 days. If an invasion happens within 8 days, we're fine. Otherwise, gotta do it again.
Are
That
you,
is
are
some-
you joking? Are you kidding?
I'm
You know, you say
familiar.
that, but it was originally classified. It was revealed to the public on April 1st, 2004. And that was an April Fool's prank
Yeah.
until someone asked the government. The government said, it certainly does seem like April Fool, but it certainly is not. The civil service does not do jokes.
So, from my perspective, I remember this coming out, and I didn't realize the chicken story. I knew of the chicken story. I didn't know it was attached to a nuclear mine, if that makes sense. But I was aware of the nuclear joke. But saying that is the most like Wallace and Gromit like
Rube Goldberg
Bullshit.
machine. Like,
yeah
you set the
yeah,
timer,
like-
and the chicken has to stay alive until the timer goes off.
Yeah, like the British are like, ooh, well, like we can't solve the heating conditions, so we just chicken will do the job. Like it is like the most Wallace. It's just, I mean, we like in Britain, we in World War II we use like pigeons to. So you know how like pigeons are really good at sending messages in World War One. The British were like, hell, but like a good aiming device for a missile. Our first prototype of a missile would be good if it was guided by a pigeon. So they put a pigeon inside of the missile, and it would poke at dots that would aim for specific targets like boats and things like that, and would force the missile to go in that direction. And we did we did that shit because we're insane in that way.
It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
I think it's great.
Yeah,
More chicken bombs.
They said, "What's that? A electric heater? No, we don't need that. We have plenty of chickens right here."
Yeah, no, like literally, it's not the first time I've heard this story because like this actually shocked me. I know of this chicken story of using chickens to like keep the temperature correct. I just didn't know it was to do with the nuclear landmines.
They're also fantastic self-stabilizing cameras.
yeah.
Multi-use chickens.
So if you think about it, this is because the chicken had to survive for the time for it to go off. This is a really, really fucked up version of Schrodinger's cat.
That's really funny.
That poor
So, yeah.
chicken.
Speaking of the Brits,
Hell yeah.
when it comes to nuclear testing, you tend to do it in wide, empty places that you don't have a lot valuable there. So the U.S. tended to use Nevada and Pacific Ocean. The USSR generally in Siberia because Siberia is not really known for being a vibrant place.
I already know where this is going.
The UK had a problem. Great Britain is pretty small, and there's not much empty land available. Certainly not enough to hold up a nuclear test. So, what do? It turns out that just 9,000 miles away is a huge, remote, and empty island that has nothing important, according to the Brits, anyway. Where? Australia.
Oh, Reggie did.
Actually, yeah, the testing site was right by the winery.
What did you?
I just want to.
What did you just say, Swag? Please translate whatever you just said.
I don't know. It's just Australian gibberish. That's most of what we say.
I just want to point out, I definitely brought this up to Tim when he told me he was doing nuclear history. I said you have to bring up the British nuclear program.
So the Brits saw the Australian outback as perfect. It was remote, it was huge, it had nothing in it, and it had some pretty good weather most of the time. So the UK established 3 test sites, one of which was literally called Emu Field, presumably as revenge for the Emu War. And they did pretty much all of their testing here. Now, despite being largely ignored, Aboriginal people did live in the outback. Like, they do exist. People are there.
I don't think so. I don't think that's real.
And one of these people was a man by the name of Nayari Morgan. He was an Aboriginal Australian who had absolutely no contact with Western civilization at this time.
Oh boy, here we go.
One day, in the middle of the 1950s, he was in the outback walking and hunting, when suddenly he saw a blinding flash of light, followed by a huge fireball and a gigantic mushroom-shaped cloud. Morgan had accidentally stumbled across Maralinga Field, the main testing site, and witnessed a thermonuclear bomb go off.
And by the way, this was his introduction to civilization.
This was his first interaction with the Western world at the time.
Quite poetic.
Yeah. His first experience was a thermonuclear bomb. He pretty obviously did not know what he was seeing. And in an interview, he later stated that he believed it was his spirits rising to speak with him. And the spirits made all the kangaroos fall on the ground. And then white powder came down and killed all the kangaroos and grass.
Oh, no.
So
you can't eat that.
Yeah. He did say that some of the kangaroos that fell down, presumably died from radiation poisoning, were taken back and eaten. It made some of the village sick, but no one actually died from the radiation poisoning, fortunately enough.
I guess it was filtered through at least one, metric kangaroo.
Yeah. One unit of kangaroo. No, we're almost done. Hang in there. I promise. So at this point, we've come with large, we've come with small, but there's one thing we haven't talked about yet, and that's the Neutron style.
Yeah!
Yeah, Jimmy!
Jimmy Neutron getting referenced a lot today.
Don't say the second half. Don't say the second half of that joke.
Yeah, I was thinking that. That's why I'm like, I'm not saying it. I'm not gonna say it.
There are a few kinds of radiation. It's not all just one monolithic thing. There's alpha radiation, beta radiation, gamma, and then neutrons. And this chart kind of shows what it takes to stop them. Alpha radiation is pretty weak. You can stop with a sheet of paper. Beta radiation gets stopped by a hand. You get stopped by skin and muscle. X-rays and gamma rays need a bit more than that. They need cement typically. Cement, lead, kind of really big, heavy things. Neutrons just go right through. So, yeah, neutrons just kind of penetrate everything. So they thought, what if we use neutrons as the weapon from the bomb? Instead of blast power, what if we try to maximize high-speed neutron radiation instead? Initially, the plan was to use them in anti-ballistic missiles. And what that is, it's a missile that is launched to intercept a ballistic missile.
So it'd be like instead of needing to hit it directly on the target, you could just blow it up in the vicinity of an enemy missile, and then it would have a higher.
So that actually is part of the problem. So explosive power requires a shockwave. And to get a shockwave, you need air. But as you get higher up, especially in things like space, there is no air. So that means there could be no shockwave. However, radiation does not need air to cause destruction.
Radiation doesn't
So
care
instead,
about
what they
your
did
feelings.
was, so basically what they did was they said the neutron radiation will cause the offensive missile to malfunction. So you do need a bit of nuclear science here, but basically, to make a nuclear reaction, a neutron hits a uranium atom, which then splits. Now, normally in a nuclear bomb, that's very controlled, that it happens all at the same time, so you get a lot of power all at the same time. However, if a stray neutron hits it, it tends to go off early and very, very out of sync. So what they decided was the intense neutron wave that hits the missile will then cause part of the missile's warhead to go off early. This means it will either melt the warhead outright, or enough of the material has gone off early, then it won't work as a bomb anymore. So instead of fissioning, it gets something called fizzling. And that reduces the power to basically nothing. Now, it also severely damaged electronics to the point of rendering them completely unusable. So they decided then it could destroy things like navigation and fusing. So if a bomb's already been deployed, even if you don't destroy the nuclear part itself, it doesn't know where it's going anymore. The missile no longer knows where it is because it doesn't know where it isn't.
I think I see where this is going.
Okay. Can I just clarify though? That is a modern Russian bomber. I am not even fucking joking. That is what Russia still uses today.
Awesome.
Yeah. And this weapon was also used in an anti-bomber role, with the express intention that it would destroy the electronics on board. So it has no GPS, no radar, nothing. It's just flying blind, basically. And actually, one pilot put it pretty well. He said that the weapon was not actually meant to shoot down the bomber, simply to destroy all the electronics on it and destroy the weapons. If the bomber went down as well, that was a plus, but was not the intention. And basically, yeah, I used the nuke to destroy the nuke.
Well said.
So eventually, they had an idea. Radiation is pretty toxic to people. So what if we use them against people? And the fact that neutrons, as we saw before, go through basically everything, this means that you could use it to punch through armor of, say, something like a tank. So what they decided to do was look at how much they actually need to kill somebody quickly. 10 grays of radiation is generally considered to be fatal. Because about 99.9% of the time, if you get hit with 10 grays, you die eventually. Maybe not quickly, maybe not painlessly, but you will die.
How much is that in CPM?
So this is part of the issue. Measuring radiation is really hard because nobody can agree on units.
I was wondering about that because I've heard Rontgens, I've heard what are the Geiger counters, and now gray. Like,
so they all measure something different, technically speaking. A Geiger counter measures counts, which literally is just how many times does a particle of radiation hit the counter.
Mm-hmm.
But what that particle is not checked. So it could be an alpha particle that gets stopped by breathing on it, or it could be a gamma particle that just flies through you and everything you know and love.
Yeah,
who knows?
Like,
not the Geiger counter.
Yeah, like when we studied this in physics, we mostly used like Rontgen, but like when I'm currently in my job at the moment in the industrial area, we deal with nuclear material often, and we use CBM. And yeah, the problem is in CPM you don't really know if it's a alpha particle or a gamma particle.
Yikes.
Yeah. So even then, grays aren't even a universal unit. Most of the world uses grays, but the US still uses something called rads, which you know from Fallout. Again, 1,000 rads kills you. And one gray is equal to 100 rads. It was defined that way. So really it was just to let the US keep their units and not mess with the rest of the world's science.
Classic.
But they realized that the bomb they put out could deliver 1,000 grays of prompt radiation. And 10 grays is the fatal dose. So this bomb will dose the entire battlefield with 100 times the lethal dose of radiation.
Does it explode?
It does explode because it is still a nuclear weapon, but about half the energy, instead of being a blast, is diverted into radiation instead.
Huh.
And this is a lot. So everybody's seen Chernobyl, and we all know the 3.6 Ronkin meme, you know, not great, not terrible.
Yeah, that's literally how I feel every time going into the field where I work.
Mhm.
Oh, it's
And
not
then,
that
you know,
bad, or-
we also know the second scene where, you know, the guy's super pissed. It's not 3 Ronkin, it's 15,000. So how many Ronkin is 1,000 grays? It turns out it's 101 gray is about 114 Ronkin. This means the maximum yield will be 114,000 Ronkin,
Oh no.
which is 100,000 Ronkin more than Chernobyl.
Jesus Christ. And people were just building this as a weapon?
Yeah, because so the idea was the Soviets would use mass tank movements in the Cold War to invade Germany. And killing that many tanks is not easy with regular weapons. So if you just blast the field with radiation, it would kill the crew. And obviously the tanks wouldn't be able to use it anymore. So 114,000 Ronkin. I'm told it's a chest X-ray. The question is, how many chest X-rays? Do we have any guesses?
A million.
Like, I don't know, enough
It's
to
a-
give it to everyone on Earth.
I would say hundreds of X-rays, but I could be wrong.
So 114,000 Ronkin is the same as 50 million chest X-rays.
I was close. I said 1 million. Just needed 50 more. 49 more.
So it's 50 million chest X-rays, all at the same time across your entire body, which wouldn't feel nice.
But would it feel
Would you just
bad?
instantly die? Like, what would
Yeah.
happen?
No, that's the
I
fun
mean,
thing about being an organic
so-
meat puppet. We don't really instantly die from anything.
So I
Oh.
like to clarify from because I've been trained in nuclear safety for my job. One thing, so we measure it in CPM, and if you are exposed to 5,000 CPM, you're probably going to die within a month. If 10,000, probably a couple of days. And I'm allowed to be exposed. My qualification allows me to be exposed to around 500 CPM in a given moment. What happened in Chernobyl, though, was there was not only a billion, but potentially a trillion CPM exposed to the natural environment of Chernobyl. Meaning, if you were exposed to the initial blast and touched the material that was part of the facility, if we've watched Chernobyl, obviously that was the graphite, you are essentially dead in either days, hours, or in some cases, minutes.
Yikes.
Yeah. So why on earth do you need that much radiation? Well, it turns out you need it to penetrate the armor of tanks. Tanks obviously have pretty thick armor, and that armor is steel. Now, the way to defend against radiation is just to throw shit in front of it, literally. The more stuff in between you and the radiation, the less chance it actually hits you. So the idea was that they need to penetrate all this, inches of steel to be able to get to the crew. So that's why we needed so much. And it also has to be able to kill the crew quickly. Because, okay, let's take a quick POV. You are a Russian tanker. It is, let's say, 1988 or so. I don't know. Pick a day in the 80s. You have just invaded those dirty capitalist pigs, and you discover you have, and the rest of your crew have just been blasted with lethal radiation. Do you A, sit back and do nothing and wait for your death in 10 to 15 business days, or realize that you're dying and make a suicide charge and kill as many Western soldiers as you can?
I'm gonna guess B.
Yeah, and that was the thought process for all the commanders as well. So they thought, obviously, we can't have that. So the story was they planned to have it be as much as possible, so the crew would be killed in 30 minutes. Which means that the bomb goes off, the battlefield is bathed in radiation. 30 minutes later, the entire invading army is dead.
Jesus
Certainly,
Christ.
certainly effective.
I remember this, like, when discussing this with even Swag. I mentioned to him about how the Russian tanks are designed, and you might have noticed compared to like the U.S. Abrams and UK Challenger, Russian tanks are quite low, and like the whole point of that was that the Russian tanks were expected to be fighting in a nuclear warfare type scenario where tactical nukes would be used on the battlefield, and the idea would be the Russian tanks could be lower so they can be covered in some sort of trench or whatever, which has become kind of the major problem in Ukraine at the moment, because that's not the war they're fighting in, and the problem is
they can't see over anything.
Well, it's not that, because they had to make the tanks so low. They put all the ammunition in the turret casing, and so the reason why there's so much footage of Russian tanks having their lids essentially pop off like a can is simply because all the ammunition is stocked up on the top to make room for a smaller chassis, and it's kind of backfired, because if you hit that head point of the tank and it penetrates, you essentially have an explosive bottle ready to burst, if that makes sense.
Yikes.
Crazy.
So yeah. Another fun fact is most tanks, at least Western tanks now, use depleted uranium as the armor because it's very, very dense and good at stopping things. However, earlier on, I mentioned that uranium is nuclear fuel, and the way it works is that when a neutron hits it, it splits off and releases 2 more smaller atoms and about 3 more neutrons.
Oh no. I see where this
This
is going.
means that if the tank is armored with depleted uranium, it triples the radiation dose to the crew. And you go from 114,000 Ronkin to almost 350,000.
Wasn't technically now I can't remember this probably, but wasn't Russia technically claiming that NATO was arming Ukraine with nuclear material because of the tank shells that were provided for the tanks that we had sent?
So
yeah.
Basically what they said was that depleted uranium is intended to be a radioactive weapon, which is not technically true, because depleted uranium has all the uranium-235 removed. So it can't be used as nuclear fuel because it doesn't work. However, again, telling people that I'm going to kill with radiation is not popular for obvious reasons. So it's very easy to complain about, even if it's not technically true. Now, this was intended to be deployed to West Germany, and intended to be as over-friendly territory. So because of that, the fact that there was much less blast energy was seen as a very popular thing, because of it less damage to German stuff. And it also meant that when deployed against tanks, the crews would be killed, but after about a day or two, the tanks would be fine. They won't be radioactive anymore, and you could just haul out the dead crew, and now you have thousands of Soviet tanks for yourself. And the fact that it had to be 1 or 2 days was also good, because it meant that the Soviets couldn't take them back. Because Soviet crews trying to recover the tanks would also be killed by the radiation. But over those 2 days, the bodies would not decompose because the bacteria would also be killed by the radiation.
Which is scary as hell as a thought. Like, you can just halt the natural cycle with enough radiation.
Yeah. So this was referred to as the capitalist bomb because the fact it was meant to kill people but not destroy property. But that's not strictly true because it still had a yield of about 10,000 tons and did this to a house from like half a mile away. So the house, to me, looks pretty destroyed in that case, doesn't it?
Well, I recognize this. I recognize the shots from this footage. So there is footage of this nuclear bomb. And if I know the nuclear bomb from this footage, this is a dangerously destructive bomb.
Yes.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way.
It was called the capitalist bomb pretty much for a propaganda purpose. Because, again, telling people, I'm going to go commit mass murder with radiation tends to not be popular. So calling this the capitalist bomb that kills people and preserves property is a pretty easy slam dunk for a propaganda piece. Even, again, if it's not technically true, it's just the idea. But, anyway, we see it. Never used. Obviously, we'd have heard about it if we did. And it would still cause significant damage to non-reinforced structures and just basically destroy them outright. Which, again, not good. Now, just one more story, I promise.
Mm-hmm.
The year is 2012.
The world is ending.
It's a good year.
The United Kingdom is helping the US out in Afghanistan. And there are some concerns that along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border, the Taliban and terrorists are secretly crossing back and forth. So that's obviously not a good thing.
I am shocked that you're bringing this up, but I'm also proud, like a dad.
So, enter a man named Lord Gilbert. He's a Labour member of the House of Lords in the UK. And he has an idea. He says, what if we carpet bomb the mountain range that makes that border? What if we literally glass the area and make it so radioactive that if you step foot in the area, you die almost immediately? Does that sound like a good idea to anyone else?
No.
Yeah. I love human sacrifice and death and destruction of nature.
Sounds like a war crime.
I say we do that everywhere.
Can I just, I mean, he's probably going to bring up, this was positioned to the parliament, and everybody laughed in his face. So just to reiterate, what he's saying is we should render an entire area and mountain range in South and in Central Asia completely uninhabitable without asking them, and then do it anyway, even if they say no.
Yeah.
Needless to say, he was not taken seriously. He was even disowned by his own party, who called him rumbustious and said his views were not shared by the rest of the party. And fun fact, he then died about 2 months later.
Please tell me it was from radiation poisoning.
I think it was just old age, because he was already really old when that happened.
Can I just say as well, the Labour Party is like the left-wing party. I mean,
that's the other
Swag
thing.
would know. Swag would know this as well because they share the same government kind of parliamentary system that we have. Labour is the left-wing party, so probably
the
less,
basically.
Yeah, the less militaristic party of the system.
You go so far left, you become far right.
Yeah.
We just showing up like we should just fucking glass them with nukes. They're like, wait, what? No, we don't do that here.
This was our clean coal moment. I remember this when I was a kid watching this. This was our clean coal, and I don't know. Did you manage to find the footage of this, Tim?
I don't have footage of it, so unfortunately not. But it's just like this guy rolled up to the House of Lords and then demanded to commit nuclear holocaust on a mountain range in Asia.
Yeah, there is footage out there somewhere of him demanding it, and it was met with laughter. No one took this seriously.
Yeah, I mean, literally, not a single other person in the country agreed with him. Like all the newspapers didn't like it. No one in the government liked it. Everyone they talked to was like, "I think he's a fucking moron," and then he died 2 months later. So yeah. Congratulations! You presumably survived to the end of this
My
presentation.
God. Thank you, Tim.
Ooh.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, it was kind of long. There was a lot to cover.
You say sorry it was long. Your presentations consistently clock well over like an hour and a half. I don't think you're sorry. I think you inflict this upon us intentionally. And you know what? We're better.
Well, it's
for it.
interesting. So
you know what? I'm glad it is this long, and I really enjoyed that presentation.
Yeah.
That was really fun. Like, because even though I knew what I knew what he was going to talk about, and like, I've got qualifications in nuclear energy. Like, that is still like surprising and like full of surprises and just like a shock to like it's even entertaining to somebody who is more informed on the topic, if that makes sense. So well done.